Clerk, time is 7:11. Call this council meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of these territories. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I wanted to ask to put forward a motion tonight. I know I didn't have it in time for GC. Unfortunately, I didn't realize we only had one GC. I've been working on this since October, and just given the nature of the motion and the holiday time, I wanted to have the opportunity to present it tonight. So I'm hoping you, council, will allow me to do that.
So many 2/3. Someone like to move approval agenda? Councillor Kim, seconder. Councillor Gardner. Is there any comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland wants to add a notice of motion that there has been no notice or it wasn't added to the GC. She wants to add it straight to council tonight. And she needs a waiver of procedural bylaw. And so we need 2/3 vote to add this. If you do not want to add it, did you want to see the whole? It's community safety and insightful speech. I mean, I can separate it and we can vote on just this and get 2/3. I'm just putting it all together to make it easier so we're not doing two separate votes. But if we want it separate because people just want to vote just on this from a procedural standpoint, I'm fine with that as well. But I'm pulling them together unless there's no objections. All right, I'm putting them together. Call the vote. I think it was Councillor Kim, Councillor Gardner. So Linda, just let you know, this is also the approval of the agenda as well. Okay. Carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, no committee presentation delegations. Council, before I go to consent agenda, I did just want to mention today, as you all know, and I want to thank all of council for being there. Fire Chief Ian Lang was laid to rest today. We had a beautiful ceremony. Many great words about a remarkable man that will be truly missed. So obviously our thoughts and prayers are with his wife Deborah and family, and it was great to see so many people there. It speaks to how much Chief Ian Lang was loved in both communities and right across the province. And I'd like to thank the Premier as well as the Solicitor General for attending and saying some beautiful words on behalf of the province of Ontario. So thank you all for attending, and move on now. Consent agenda. Someone like to move the approval of the consent agenda, 7.1 to 7.8. Councillor Thompson. seconder. Councillor Weiss. Any comments, questions? Call the vote. That carries. Standing committee reports. Where do you want anything pulled? We get a motion to approve the standing committee reports. Can I get a motion to approve the standing committee reports? Councillor Gallo.
So just for clarity, 813, Town of Aurora official plan draft. That's a motion to receive.
Mhm.
Do we need to approve this tonight?
It's up to council.
Asking staff.
Mr. Romano.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're asking me, yes, I'm hoping council will consider the OP and adopt it this evening.
Councillor.
Okay. So what's on the floor? Sorry. Right now, what's on the floor?
I'm asking nothing. I'm asking for a motion to approve the standing committee reports, or if anyone wants anything pulled. So far, no one's pulled anything and no one's given me a motion. Councillor Thompson. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else? Councillor Gilliland. 8.1.5.
Mhm.
Anything else? Can I get a motion to approve standing committee reports minus 8.1.3 and 8.1.5? Councillor Gardner, seconder.
For
Councillor Thompson,
1.1.
call the vote. That carries. 8.1.3, Councillor Thompson, you pulled this one. Before anyone starts, I'm just going to remind everyone. If you pulled something, you either pulled it for a vote or to bring forward new information. If there's going to be repetition, I'm going to hold everyone to the procedural bylaw and I'm going to cut you off. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
I did pull it for a vote, but I'd like to put the original staff motion on the table, including the amendment that was passed at GC. So all 6 recommendations. And for those that are not in favor, they can always separate it and vote it individually.
Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Thompson.
I'd like to move the original motion from GC, including the amendment that was passed. I can read it out.
So it'd be the entire, basically what we voted on a GC. Okay, is there a seconder? No seconder? Councillor Gallo, thank you. Any comments or questions? I'm assuming we're going to call them separately, Councillor Gallo? Because I know you wanted that one separate at GC, so I'm assuming you'd want that one separate again. Yeah. So I'm going to do number 5 at least at a minimum separate. Councillor Gardner?
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions.
Are they the same ones from last week?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, I noticed that the web version of the draft OP isn't, in one instance for sure, isn't the same as what we had at GC and tonight at council. In the web version talking about site-specific policy 57, it says minimum height of 7 stories under the density section. And then in what we have with our agenda, it says maximum 7 stories, which I really like a lot, but are there any other changes here that you can tell us about? Because that shouldn't be happening.
Shimano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that minimum was a typo, and that was corrected on the draft version that's on our website. But if I can ask, and I did forget to mention or recognize and acknowledge Edward Terry, our senior policy planner, who's been involved in the OP update since day one with our managing our consultants, and David Riley is here with us again. But if I can ask Edward just to clarify that point with respect to the minimum and maximum.
Mr. Jarrett? It's on.
Through you, the chair, there's a version 1.0 and 2.0. So the 1.0 was a public facing version of the final draft for public comment. We made minor changes to that version based on the comments we received. And we noticed the typo for 57 at that time. So what you saw at the general committee meeting was the final version that had all of those changes.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you again, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, I'm trying to understand what you said last week. You said that the EIS by the environmental impact statements by developers, their consultants produce those reports, and I'm pretty sure you said that we peer review those either through Lake Simcoe or our consultants. I don't remember any peer review comments in any of our public planning reports. So perhaps you could tell me off the top of your head, or maybe send some examples to council in an email.
Shimano?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, up until a little while ago, I guess about a year ago, the conservation, or prior to Bill 23, I believe, Conservation Authority was reviewing those environmental impact studies for us. They're no longer allowed to review those. So we then retain a third-party environmental consultant to conduct the applicants, a review of the applicants' environmental impact study. When we do our reports, our public information meeting reports to our statutory public planning meeting, at that point, we would not have the results of the review of a lot of those background studies. But when we do come to a general committee meeting with a comprehensive report, moving forward, those environmental impact studies will have been reviewed by consultants that we retain.
Councillor?
So the place where we would see those comments from our peer reviewers would be at a general committee.
Exactly.
On a
Yes.
general committee report.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is my understanding. So all three, Mr. Merritt. So the OP has to follow the Planning Act. And from what I've read, my understanding is that in order to have a site-specific policy on an OP, that a zoning bylaw change is required. And I don't remember us doing that with respect to policy 57. I don't remember council doing a zoning bylaw review and changing it from employment to urban residential. So did I miss that?
Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in that instance on that parcel, we conducted council passed an interim control bylaw last year to conduct a review of that site and the appropriate land uses as part of the official plan review. So what we did through our review over the past year, staff and our consultants determined what the appropriate land use for that site was, and we've identified it in the latest draft as residential, medium high density residential. And so we then identified the site specific policy within our official plan, just to identify that particular site. Moving forward, that site, like any other sites that if they do come forward with development application, and we do have development applications on that particular parcel, they're in front of the tribunal, they still need to go through at a minimum, a rezoning process. But again, that application will be dealt with at the tribunal, and the tribunal's hearing starts at the end of February of 2024.
Councillor?
Through Mr. Mayor, my understanding was from that interim control bylaw that staff was going to do a review, but that they were going to come back to council, because I think it's council that has to do that bylaw change. I don't remember that council ever did that. That's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Rumuno, I just wanted to have some clarity. What is the current height in the draft plan on local roads, local corridors?
Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So within the local corridors, the maximum height permitted is 4 stories within the local corridors, being the Leslies, Wellingtons, Bayviews, etc. And then we have identified Yonge Street as a regional corridor outside of the promenade area, and the maximum height permitted there is 5. 4 in the local corridors and 5 in the regional corridor.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Rumuno, how many 7 and 9 story applications do we already have approved or built?
Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have we have some older building stock that date back, a number of decades throughout the Yonge and Wellington corridor, with heights ranging from 4 to 7, some older building stock. Over the past number of years, council has approved a number of applications. Some aren't built yet. A lot of them just have their approvals. The majority of those are recently within our promenade area, Leslie Street, north of Wellington, around the GO station, and up and down Yonge Street.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Rumuno. You mentioned Leslie Street. How many 7-story buildings do we have there and are approved on that local road?
Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. On the west side of Leslie Street, just north of Wellington by William Graham, we have the 1, 2, I think it's 3, if not 4, the Christian seniors housing developments. They're built. One's close to being completed, and council recently approved 3, the Polo Club, 3 7-story buildings just north of Wellington, north of the Esso station. And there's another 6-story building that was approved on Holiday, the corner of Leslie and Hollidale.
Councillor?
And there's another existing 4-story building just further north that was built north of William Graham. That was built by Brookfield, one of the first buildings on that stretch, I believe.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just to clarify, that most recent build or that was approved or potentially approved also includes affordable housing or potentially affordable housing. Is that correct?
Romano,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the 3 buildings approved at the Polo Club was approved with the understanding that New York Region Community Housing is definitely interested in one of those 7-story buildings for community housing.
Councillor.
Thank you. The reason for all my questions, I just wanted to kind of understand, how we got to this point in our official plan. I know you have put a lot of hard work in the last 4 years or more creating this official plan. Don't deny that staff's done a lot of work and a lot of outreach with the community. If you can confirm through Mr. Chair to Mr. Ramuno, I believe the consultant said that the comfort level for growth and moving forward was at that 7-story mark. Is that correct?
Romano,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. I mean, David is here this evening as well, and I think you've heard me say that, and that's based on the close to 4 years of the of consultation that was undertaken and the input we've received from not only council but our community members and stakeholders. So, yeah, we're confident in the in the plan and the policy and height framework that's in the plan.
Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I guess where I'm going with this is, I guess my question, here's another question then I said through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, that would you agree that an affordability plan would identify or possibly influence appropriate growth areas to help us identify where that would be?
Mr. Romano.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've identified in our official plan not only the appropriate location and the built form of housing throughout town, but we've also updated as part of the OP review some of our housing and affordable housing policies. And I know council's also directed staff, as a follow-up to the OP, to work on a housing action plan as well. And that's really to work with the community partners to look at other opportunities to try and achieve sort of more affordable or attainable housing. I think the starting point is having a plan in place with the appropriate housing policies to guide that housing development.
Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, so I partially answered the question. I'll just make a comment. Obviously, where I'm going with this is that we don't have the Affordable Housing Action Plan in front of us. I know this is something we asked for over a year ago, and I would really hope that that would help influence what we do here today. And I'm not discrediting any hard work that we've worked on this official plan. I just believe a lot has changed in the last 12 months. With Bill 23, the amount of people we've accepted into our country, over 1 million people. We have a lot of pressure. We're under a housing crisis, and clearly we need to put more shovels in the ground. And when we started this process with the official plan, obviously we couldn't really predict we'd be in this position. However, I am seeing a lot of applications, especially on the Leslie corridor, that tend to be around that comfort level that the OP has recognized, which is at 7 stories. However, what I'm seeing on the actual OP is that there's only 2 points within the official plan that really have that 7-story leverage, which is in the very southern part by Murray and the very northern part by Orchard Heights, and then also just on the east side of the GO train. So I guess where I'm going with this is that I feel that, it's our responsibility to reduce the red tape and the bureaucracy, because if the local corridors, Leslie being one of them, Wellington another, we have that height restriction right now at 4 stories. What I'm seeing here is that we will always have applications coming back to us on that corridor, because it tends to be where the precedence is being set in a lot more desirable location to where it's appropriate. We've sat here and we've approved it. We've seen some affordable housing go in. And I just question whether or not maybe we should take a pause and look at the local corridors and maybe reevaluate to at least make an assessment on the current climate. Again, I don't want to discredit all the hard work that everybody's done thus far, but I think it would be good for us to streamline this process a little bit better so we can expedite some more housing initiatives along these corridors if it fits. So that's kind of where I stand today. And I would prefer to at least pause this. I know we have an amendment, not an amendment, but I guess there is an amendment on the floor of what's here. But personally, I would like to see us focus on reviewing the local and regional corridors and reevaluating the heights to ensure that we are targeting some density where it's appropriate for affordable housing and see that report back so it can help us influence and maybe just do some minor edits on our official plan so we're not holding up this type of development. That's where I am today.
Thank you, Councillor Weiss.
And is around Schedule K in the active transportation area. I see a lot of good words in there, and I think there's a propensity towards working towards active transportation in the community, and I think that's great in the official plan. But when I looked at the previous term and the previous council, there were a number of reports about active transportation and walking pedestrian travel across the train tracks, and we've heard from people a number of times that that's desirable. It may not be affordable right at the moment, but I believe it was something that was approved as a concept. And when I looked at Schedule K, I was disappointed not to see that track corridor with some kind of pedestrian crossing. If this is to be a plan, should we be including the previous information from the report so that at least it's on our planning documents that we would be looking forward towards a pedestrian underpass or some type of travel across the tracks that split us from east to west. So through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, it's really a matter of if that planning or those the previous report should be included in this term and in this official plan.
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Weiss, and I know where your your point is identifying those some of those pedestrian connections across the rail corridor. We've got the active transportation plan as part of this OP, but there's also a separate document that we're working on, which is our master active transportation plan. And we're going to be bringing that final draft to council sometime in the new year. And we are looking and working with the Metrolinks with respect to trying to identify any other potential pedestrian connections over the corridor. So that will be the document where I think if we're successful in convincing Metrolinks to identify a connection, it will be in that document. That's a standalone document. And if that happens down the road, we'll eventually update the schedules in this official plan to reflect that new master active transportation plan. That's a separate document. And, I've heard from council regarding the concerns about ensuring we have those pedestrian connections across town. And that's something we're still in discussions with Metrolinks on.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Although all I did was move the motion the first time. But anyways, through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, based on the comments, both the GC and this week, there's some concerns, it seems, around the table that perhaps the official plan doesn't adequately address the evolving needs of the community, that it may be not as current as we like. So perhaps, you can speak a little bit to the purpose of the plan and again, just reiterate about in terms of its development, because when you read the plan itself and you talk about the opening paragraph, it talks about aligning itself with the policies of the province, aligning with the policies of the region, being guided by the population figures for 2051, and sets out how we're going to evolve to that point. But given some of the changing dynamics of the last couple of years, do you still feel the plan is current and adequately addresses those issues that seem to be very prevalent in today's conversations? Through you to Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I still think it's a relevant plan, and that's why it's before council this evening. Just to take a step back, you're right. I mean, we were required to update our official plan, and we started this process back in early 2020. We needed to update to be in conformity with the regional plan, but also the provincial growth plan. There are some key changes that were made to the plan as part of our update, and based on what we heard from our community residents, ratepayers, and council with respect to updating our housing policies specifically. And we did expand and create our major transit station area as required by the region and the province that looks at that's one of our focal intensification areas. The other big change, I think, is that we've identified our local and regional corridors, the local corridors along all of those arterial roadways, to now identify those as areas for mixed uses, including residential up to a maximum of 4 stories. And I've heard some of the some of the comments with respect to are they appropriate heights? You've heard from David Riley, our consultant, as well, and I agree that we feel they're appropriate based on the context here in Aurora and what we've heard through the consultation period. Having said that, every municipality that goes through this exercise, as soon as you adopt your plan and it's approved by the region, we're bound to get amendments, and that's just the nature of the process we're in. And at that point, when we do get amendments to the official plan, we'll evaluate those as part of our formal review and planning process to determine if there is merit in an amendment to the official plan. And that may be for an amendment to increase heights along those corridors. But that aside, I think we've got a solid sort of baseline and policy framework for with respect to our housing policies and the heights and the built form permissions that we've identified in those sections of the official plan.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, through you to Mr. Ramuno, if council chooses to adopt this plan and it goes on to the region, gets adopted, what's the timeline look for the continual revision or updating of the official plan? Would it, as we noted in this one, it was a number of years before we chose to do it. What do you see as being the next steps in the development of this plan?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just so I'm clear, Councillor Thompson. So, I mean, the first part of the question, I think, is if council adopts a plan, we then send it to the region for their approval. They've been involved as part of our steering committee team in working with us. So we would expect that the region would do a report to their council sometime in the first quarter. February is probably too soon. March or April, hopefully. To approve it. Likely what happens is they may have identify some mods, but we think we've been working well with them. If they do identify some modifications, we'll certainly report that back to council. But once the region approves the plan, it'll be in force in effect. There's obviously an appeal period as well. There are opportunities for third-party appeals, but we'll have a new updated official plan. The one thing I failed to mention is the other key change to the plan was in respect to the change in the population employment forecasts and the planning horizon out to 2051. So we're in conformity with that process. At that point, our next review would be Plan Act was changes to say that we can review plans up to within 10 years. So it could happen sooner, even beyond. Going through a official plan review, there may be areas that we may want to review in a few years' time once we understand whether we've got some of the policies right moving forward. If there are areas that we need to take a look at, they could be looked at as a separate land use review and amendments to the official plan. No different than an applicant coming forward with a private application. Council could always initiate amendments to our official plan if it's to a particular policy within the official plan, even in advance of the full, 5 or 10 year review.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that there are steps available to us to ensure that the official plan is always current and reflective of the evolving needs of the community. My second question, you kind of answered it, but I'll just to confirm through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. So last week there was a number of conversations around the property at Wellington and Leslie, 1289 Wellington. Can you update us on the current status of it? I think you said in relation to Councillor Gilliland that, or maybe it was Councillor Gardner, that it's at the OLT and it'll be discussed at the end of February?
Mr. Ramono?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes. So there is a Ontario Land Tribunal hearing date scheduled for the end of February. I believe it's February 26th or the 28th. That's when it begins, and it's a 10-day hearing. The applications before the tribunal are the original residential application for a residential condominium building. The original application was for 7 stories. The applicant has since revised that to and upped it to a 13-story building. So that'll be the matter before the board at the end of February.
Thank you.
Council-
So through you again, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramono, is it possible then that property in question, the OLT could rule on and determine its future fate before we approve our official plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can almost guarantee that there'll likely be a decision at the board sometime, or the hearing will be over by the first week of March. And I doubt very much that the region has enough time to take a report to their council on ROP, on the approval of ROP.
Council
So,
Thompson, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. Mr. Ramono, will the province changes reach royal assent before that hearing?
to you, Mr. Mayor, that's a good question. I believe they will, because Bill 150 was introduced, I believe Bill 150 some time ago. So it still hasn't received royal assent. We're hearing that it may receive royal assent before the end of the year or early in the new year. So that's likely to happen. And they are clawing back that modification as it relates to that specific property.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that, because I think that's an important factor as well, because if that happens before the hearing, that means when we move into a hearing, the fact that the modification that was in place will have been reversed, which means that now it will not be a minimum 12, it'll be just a maximum 7. Councillor, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Just finally, just a comment. I kind of spoke about this a little bit last week at GC. I'm supportive of the official plan as is. I think that we've done a fair bit of work over the years to develop this plan. As indicated by Mr. Ramono, it is reflective of the needs of the community and some of the pressures that we are facing. But at the same time, it's a living document, and we can continue to address any areas that council may have concerns on going forward. But I think it's important that we get it approved now and continue to move forward in the process. So I'll be supporting it this evening.
Okay, Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess through you to Mr. Muno. Mr. Muno, point 6, the amendment, protection of the natural environment. Is that going into the first paragraph of the vision statement? That's a yes?
Yes.
A lot of
Yeah,
heads
to you,
nodding
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
yes.
That was what the amendment was last.
Thank
last
you.
week.
And I think I need to provide a little clarification on my comment. With respect to the interim control bylaw, because it didn't result in a report back to council about changing zoning bylaw from employment to urban residential, I don't think the proper process was followed. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just through you to Mr. Ramuno, in terms of timing, there's some things that I heard tonight that have some merit. The active transportation, and I'm part of the committee, and I know we worked hard on the master plan, and it's going to be coming back to us. And personally, I'd love to see the changes that come out of that plan incorporated into our official plan, and perhaps some more teeth. As well as Councillor Gilliland's comments on getting more information on how we deal with different types of housing. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, in terms of timing, let's say we didn't approve it tonight, and let's say we waited for some of these other documents to be completed. How would that affect? Is there a specific deadline that we have?
Mr. Ramono.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Edward and David, correct me, but yeah, we do have under the Planning Act, it does identify that we have a year to local council has a year to update their official plan from the time the regional official plan was approved, and that was approved by the province back in November. So we're at that year timeline. With respect to any updates, I mean, with respect to the active master transportation plan, that's no different. It's a standalone document similar to our active trails plan. It's a standalone document. That's something that we refer to, especially when we're dealing with our development applications. But again, having said that, our active I'm not suggesting that council should delay the adoption of the official plan. I think we've gone through that process. I'm hoping council adopts it this evening. But what may happen is we're bringing forward the active transportation plan early in the new year. If that gets endorsed by council and there are changes that we need to make to the schedule within this official plan, we can certainly send those up as a modification to the region, and they could be incorporated in the final approval of this document. That won't be a problem.
Councillor?
Okay, that's good to hear. The only other comments that I have is that we speak to the plan in terms of height, and in my view, particularly around the MTSA, we speak to what's good for us and what we think is proper planning. But I think we can all agree at this table what's reflected in the draft plan is not reality in terms of what this council has and past councils have already approved in terms of height. We have 8-story and I think even 9-story buildings out there already. And my biggest concern is around MTSA. And it's been my opinion for a long time that if we want to curb urban sprawl, we build the density around public transportation corridors. And we are lucky in Aurora to have that hub. In my view, that is where our density should be focused. And suggest 7 stories as a max isn't reflective of what's out there right now. And I realize every application is different, and everyone has a right to come to us and try to do their best to convince council that their application has merit and would benefit from its approval. And everyone still has that opportunity, even with this draft at 7 stories. My comment is it's 7 stories in the plan. It's not reflective of what's out there. Should it be? It's a question to council, particularly around our public transportation corridor.
Councillor Reese, second time.
Yeah, thank you. And it twigged when Councillor Gilliland was talking about the Affordable Housing Action Plan. And in the document, I read earlier that one of the strategies that are in place is to use some municipally owned surplus land, but I don't see it anywhere. Is there a map, or is there a description of the amount of it, the location of it for us, and should it be in the official plan in some way, shape, or form to Mr. Ramuno?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I mean, that's not, the official plan is not going to really is not there to identify sort of the ownership, land ownership of different parcels. It's really the land use plan to identify where the development should go, and what type of development should be there. That's something that will likely come forward out of the housing action plan with respect to identifying opportunities that may exist within town that already have sort of a designation, whether it's owned by a private landowner. Maybe there's opportunities where we can partner with them, or there may be municipal lands or regional lands that are available to provide community housing and affordable housing.
Councillor?
Thanks. I look forward to seeing it in the action plan then.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, call the vote. 5 separate. Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on some of the things that I heard around the table, I just want to respond to. One of them being that we're current, and I just think it's a subjective term, because then that would tell me that we don't need an affordability action plan because we're so current. When I had looked at the in progress and what it was specifically supposed to be doing, it was supposed to be guiding us to help promote attainable housing options for residents through this plan. So I don't believe we're 100% current. I think maybe we're current without the crisis that we're facing today. And I think that it's in our duty to look at this with that lens. And given the fact that we've identified that there's that comfort level with the 7-story inappropriateness in certain areas, we're seeing that already on Leslie Street and other streets, Young Street, in the MTSA as well. But I believe in the local and regional corridors would be appropriate for us to not stand in the way and putting more bureaucracy on these applications. I would suggest that by looking at some of the mapping that was provided to us within the MTSA where this height would be granted, these are all in development areas where there's existing single homes, where I don't see any kind of development happening for many, 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 many years. If I were looking at opportunity within the town of Aurora, where there is open land and vacant space to build, I would be looking where we're not tearing down and rebuilding. And that would give us more of an immediate shovel in the ground and opportunity to increase housing right away. And so for me, that is why I'm looking at this in a different lens than when we had started 4 years ago. So to Councillor Thompson's point, while this might be a living document, at the same time, we usually like to stand behind our official plan when we're making decisions. And if I were to take Leslie Street as an example, because we sat here last week to talk about an application with 7 stories and affordable housing and many other projects, it would suggest that pretty much any other development moving forward, any vacant piece of land that wanted to put affordable housing, most likely is going to be asking for more intensification. And I believe the whole point is to recognize within this affordability action plan is to try and streamline this type of opportunity. I don't see any quick fixes or opportunities within the identified areas in our promenade, other than the very southern end where the Canadian Tire Plaza is, where a few people sat around the table and didn't even want to talk about it at the public planning meeting. And now we're at OLT. So again, we stalled that. So for me, I don't want to approve this right now, because I do think it's important for us to help streamline this. And I do want to have staff look at an affordability action plan as promotioned a year ago and give us those tools to identify so we can streamline this properly. I just think this is some minor edits that we can identify some of this intensification, and then we can look at it more accordingly. I don't think it's necessarily maybe in all areas. Just like in the promenade now, we have it ranging from 3 to 7 stories. And I think this is something that we can expand on in these areas to help streamline so we can avoid these situations. I just think that we're leaving some opportunity, away by not looking into this. Also within the OP draft form, it suggests 35% affordability to be offered in this type of intensification. And I find it very hard to believe that that's going to be very attainable at all on any new development suggesting at 4 stories. So again, we're creating a little bit more bureaucracy. I just think that we're at a time and a stage that we're ebbing and flowing and changing. So again, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't do our job in the last 4 years, but I think that we have to roll up our sleeves and make some aggressive changes and identify where we should actually put this intensification faster and sooner and quicker, where it would make sense. So I would prefer to wait to identify that through an action plan to help us give those tools to identify that, as opposed to passing this at 4 stories and making it even more difficult. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, within the open land space, within that area, is there a lot of parcels that are even available there? I feel like there's opportunity there, and I don't know why we would be holding up any kind of developments from moving forward faster.
Mr. Romano?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Councillor Gilliland, what area are you referring to? The local corridor?
Yes.
So with respect to the local corridor, I think that's one of the bigger changes in between the old plan and this current plan is previously those corridors, all the major arterial roads did not have a specific policies that allowed for mixed uses and heights for housing up to 4 stories. So that's new. We've added that.
I
So
just want to know if there was empty land vacancies that were available in the local corridors. That's all.
Through the chair.
Sorry.
Through the
So
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr.
Through
Romano,
Mr.
this is
Mayor.
the last question.
There are there vacant lands, but there are opportunities for some land assembly. And we're already starting to see that. I can just point
Yep.
to the properties along Wellington corridor. 4 or 5 homes have been sold and have been assembled by a purchaser, and they haven't come in yet, but they will eventually with an application.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And
Councillor Gallo.
okay, I guess 5 minutes up.
Thank you. Just on the is it Affordable Housing Action Plan? Is that the name? What is the status to you, Mr. Mayor, of it?
Mr. Romano.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I think when that motion was brought forward, we advised that we would then follow up with a housing action plan once we completed our official plan. But we also, in response to that motion, we did say that we were going to update our housing and affordable housing policies within the plan, and we have done that over the past year. So I think sometime in 2024 we'll work towards bringing forward that that additional document to council for consideration. I don't have a definitive date yet, but it'll be sometime in 2024, likely the second or third quarter.
Councillor.
Can it not be, through you, Mr. Mayor, be fast tracked in any way to similar to the Trails Master Plan to have it completed prior to the final approval and incorporate anything that might come out of that?
Mr. Romano.
Through Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do our best, but I just want to be clear that, whatever comes out of that plan, I don't really see, unless council directs us to amend or change the actual heights in the current plan. The housing action plan really isn't going to identify that, right? It's going to work based on the current planning framework within our official plan, those areas for intensification, and we're going to look at opportunities where we can perhaps identify parcels that we can work with the applicant or another housing authority to try and achieve more affordable, attainable housing. But I don't think that that process is going to result in changes to the official plan, which is really a land use plan.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Do any other comments or questions? Just want to clarify something because it was referenced, I think, last week at GC. I think the Canadian Tire property that we dealt with, Smart Centers, the vote was to go to another public planning, and the vote was 5-2 to go to another public planning. And Councillor Kim and myself were the ones that were against that. And as I've always stated, I believe that we should be continuing through the process. And if we disagree with that application, then we can say no when we get to the end of the process. That's how we cut the red tape. That's how we make a more efficient process instead of continuing to go to another public planning, another public planning, another public planning. It's no wonder people take us to the tribunal quickly. I always said, as I said last week, we changed the baseline. It's just going to change what they come in with their application. They're just going to ask for more. And quite frankly, we've made some adjustments. We've gone from 5+2 in our MTSA. We've gone to now, as of right, 7. That's what we're going to in our new plan and our update. And we've increased the MTSA area. We're seeing that's massive intensification. And do people come in with a bigger proposal? Absolutely. That's what they do all the time. And like I said last week, unless legislation changes that allows us to uphold our OP, where everyone understands that this is the OP, this is what it is, these are the numbers, this is the height. And unless we can just say no and there's no appeal, they're always going to come in with a higher number. And then it's up to the council to decide that what's being proposed, are there benefits to the community to allow and be flexible and to move away from the hard, rigid stand of this is our OP. That's our decision. That's why the community elects us to put us here to make those decisions on their behalf. So I'll be in favor of the OP. Councillor Gilliland, you spoke twice. Call the vote. 5 is separate. Yep, 5 is separate. Just waiting for a vote. That carries. Number 5. Councillor Kim. Mr. Weiss. Cute. That's defeated. So before we move to 8.1.5, Mr. Ramon, I just want to ask, with that last clause being defeated, that just means that you're going to come back if there are any appeals. Okay, thank you. Just so everyone has that understand that we don't need to make a further, okay. 8.1.5, pending list review. Councillor Gilliland, you pulled this one. Do you want to move as is? Seconder? Councillor Gallo, thank you. Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Ms. McDougall. I had a question about air dome structure and the progress said completed, but yet it was my understanding that there were some people who had an interest in partnering with the town or of the like, and yet they felt that they had not had any conversations or approach. So I'm just curious as to why it's in a completed status as opposed to an in progress status.
McDougall.
For you, Mr. Mayor, well, staff felt during the field development strategy was the report back on the current status of our options really are limited based on land and the lack of land, municipal land to use for a project like this. But it also noted in that report that staff will continue to review. As we know, it's a desire of council. It's also noted in our Parks Recreation Master Plan to continue to consider opportunities when they arise. So as far as the motion goes, strictly that we felt the motion itself was complete, but the item is not being parked. It is an item that we know is in our actions, recommendations within the study. As far as partners go, we're always open for new partnerships. And it's just a matter of if somebody wishes to come forward. We haven't put out a call for interest. So if there's somebody that is known and they know this topic is of interest, we'd be happy to have the conversations. So if you're speaking of somebody, please direct them our way. We'd love to have this conversation. So it's complete as it relates to the motion, but we know the subject is not finished. We've got more to study.
Councillor.
Thank you. As far as the motion's concerned, I was under the impression that that perhaps some discussions would have happened. I thought I had expressed some interest offline from other people and directed them, but I'm assuming that wasn't followed through. So I just would like to ensure that that is at least an in progress, I guess an in progress status. So at least we can keep the conversation going, because I feel like it hasn't been completed. Is that something that you would be willing to change on your status?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly if that's of comfort of council, by all means, it was something that we felt as far as a directive of a motion, we'd had reported back, but noting also in that report that it is continually being reviewed. So conversations further, absolutely. We can continue to leave it as pending if council prefers.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, would I be required to have to make an amendment specifically on that in order for it to be changed? Or is that something that you could just do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking over to our deputy town clerk, as it's their record and file that they keep. Go ahead, Jeff.
Madam Deputy Clerk?
Sorry, thank you. I would recommend that you put forward an amendment to revise the item on the pending list.
Councillor?
Okay, well then I would like to put an amendment to change that status to in progress, because I feel that there's still some more work to do and maybe there was just a miscommunication. Through Mr. Chair to the clerk, would you, or Mr. Chair, would you ask if anybody would like to second my amendment?
Any seconds? Any comments to the amendment? We'll vote.
I don't. Maybe Ms. McDougall has the number handy. OPS 19.
Okay, council, it's going to come up on the screen any second. All the vote. Councilor Weiss? Councilor Weiss is yes. That carries. Back to Councilor Gilliland. Floor still yours.
That's all.
Thank you. Councilor Weiss?
About the status of the report as it stands right now, but I assume that that amendment will mean that the report will be coming back after it's completed, or are we going to see the information that has been already done now? So I don't know if that's a procedural thing or if it's a question for Mrs. McDougall, because I assume she has the report.
Councilor, do you mean to that specific item?
That's right.
That specific item, okay. Mr. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention would be for us, once we have something to bring back to council, we would definitely be doing so. So it's a matter of confirming land options. If there's a partner that's come to the table, that is when we would return to council.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's clear.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All the vote, motion as amended. Councillor Weiss?
Yes.
Councillor Weiss, say yes. Guess your iPad's not working tonight. That carries. 9.1. Interim forecast update. So we received for information. Who would like to move that? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions? Call the vote. Councillor Thompson. Carried. Worked the second time. 10.1. Councillor Gilliland, this is your motion. Do you want to move it as is? Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Councillor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll be pretty quick and sweet. This is about the homelessness and it impacts everybody in the community. It affects individuals, families, women fleeing violence, youth, seniors, men, veterans, and people with disabilities. And there is no doubt that homelessness has been an increasing issue that's becoming worse as the days go by. And I just do want to say that since I started drafting this motion a while ago, I do realize and recognize the province has made some additional commitments to ending homelessness, such as adding an additional $202 million each year to the homeless prevention program, and also the housing plan. And but also, according to the federal housing advocate Marie Jose Houle, the federal 2023 budget investments fell drastically short what's required to stem and tide the housing loss and homelessness that's sweeping across this country. And we really need to focus on tangible financial resources to make sure that human rights is upheld for everybody. Additionally, in this motion, I did want to put a focus on mental health, addiction, and those with disabilities as well. And this is something that I know AMO had called on municipalities to speak to. So this really does acknowledge and identifies our commitment to Aurorans who do need help, and also speaks to our needs and our expectations, where all levels of government, AMO, and stakeholders can support and collaborate together in a way that we can achieve these goals successfully. As municipalities, we need help, and we're calling on everyone to expedite this need, especially as the winter weather approaches. And the more voices that speak up, the more actions we want to see. Thanks for your time and support.
Do you have any other comments, questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very important motion. Thank you, Councillor Gilliland, for putting it forward and for the comprehensive wording that you've put forward, not only to us, but to the province.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this. I'm not sure who wouldn't. But I did, I'm not sure if the councillor could expand on anything specific that we can do. There's a lot of, encouraging other levels of government to do and all of that, which we have some say in, but sometimes I believe not much, particularly the last few years. I want these things to have some type of an outcome. That's why we do them. And if there's something specific that we as a council, we as a town can do, I don't know if there's anything that can be added for you to Councillor Gilliland.
Councillor.
Sorry, could you repeat the question you're asking of me?
Councillor Gallo.
I switched.
There's a lot of us asking other levels of government, do things and encouraging them. And that's great. And I think we should. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely confident that it'll move the dial in any direction because we don't have a lot of say in the province or the federal government. We do here at this table. And if there's something specific that you believe we can do as a council and as a town to move this important issue forward, is there anything specific that you'd want us to do?
Councillor?
Thank you. I mean, I think that any opportunity that we have as council to help the homelessness in our town, I think we should take a serious look at, and we should be supporting it. Whether it's a new project or whether it's funding or whether it's advocating for supports that we can do. Absolutely. I think we should be using our voice as councillors, especially when we're calling on stakeholders and other federal governments. I think the challenge is right now that municipalities, we don't have the funding and we need the help. And this is really a cry for help and acknowledging that cry for help. But it's also our responsibility as a municipality to accept opportunities as they're presented. And if we are presented with these opportunities, we should also reciprocate.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I mean, I look forward to anything that we can do to help as a council, and to deal with very serious and growing issues in our communities. There's no doubt about that. So I'll be supporting this.
You. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. That carries. 10.2. Motion for development policy for community partner reserve funds. Someone want to move that? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Weiss, any comments or questions? Councillor Weiss?
I think I like the motion, and I'm thankful that it came forward because I brought the problem forward before. But the other criteria, I think, that's not in this motion, and maybe could be, should be, or maybe it just goes to the treasurer when she's doing her work, has to do with the verification of the numbers. I mean, it's one thing to take a look at the operating reserves that any organization that we fund has, but it's another thing to be able to verify it. And I believe most of the community partners that we have do have audited financial statements, and I'd just like her to consider that as another eligibility requirement for receiving funds from the town. So I don't know if it requires an amendment or if she'll just take that advice and make sure it's included in the report. Through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
I'll go to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, but I'm pretty sure she'll hear the comments from council as well, and she'll put that in what she structures and bring back to us in a report as far as a policy to move forward with.
Thank you.
But Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, if you wanted to add to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll take those comments into consideration, and any policy that moves forward will come back to council.
Councillor? Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel, just I guess in terms of managing expectations, have you seen other municipalities or organizations develop a policy such as this that we can you can perhaps speak to, just in terms of giving a sense of what may come back to us?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't had the chance to do that research yet, but that's part of what we'll do as a starting point to look to see what others have implemented. We also know what we are required to provide as well when we receive grants from other granting agencies, so we can look at those requirements that are upon us when we're also considering the requirements that we're putting on those that we're giving money to.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? Call. Councillor Kemp?
Through you, Mayor Mrakas, or maybe the question will be directed to you. Will this also, community partners also include Central York Fire.
Ms. Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would not include Central York Fire in this. They have a completely separate agreement and funding agreement that we have with the town of Newmarket, and it's pretty comprehensive.
Councillor? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call vote. That carries. Next motion, Councillor Gilliland, this is yours. Would you like to move as is? Pardon? No, I got a new motion that we added. Yes, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Gardner, I'll get it up on the screen for you. Councillor Gilliland, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate letting me put in this motion forward. I had worked on this for a while, but just due to the sensitivity in nature, I needed to do some more outreach and review. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of escalation and violent activities and unrest around the world that's really triggered some homeland rallies and advocacy that has supported a lot of insightful actions. And it has been causing a lot of uncertainty in our town and safety concerns. And I know I've been reached out by residents personally expressing concerns of the unsafety and asking for peace and protection. And, I know there's a lot that's out of our hands as a municipality, but what really this motion does call on the governments to strengthen their available tools to deny some of this insightful speech that's been encouraging some violent behavior. But most importantly, I think ultimately what we need to encourage the community and our local leaders of faith to bring the community together and promote peace and healing and understanding at this difficult time. We are in the holiday season right now, and there's nothing worse than feeling anxiety and stress and unsafe at this time. And I think it's really important as leaders that we acknowledge and reach out to our residents that they are feeling this way, and we are listening, and we do hear what you're saying, and we are calling for the community to come together and set our examples of peace and promote that healing accordingly. I'm going to leave it at that. It's very simple. And thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a very peaceful and humble and a nice holiday with their family. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I'll also be supporting this. I just have some questions on how some of these things, how will they be executed if this thing passes? Clause 2 that we, call on all levels of government to acknowledge the uncertainty in staff. I guess that's covered by clause 4 that will be sharing this with all federal and provincial government and all municipality of Ontario. Number 3, particularly to us, the council encourages our community and diverse local leaders of faith to bring to the community together to promote peace, healing, and understanding during these difficult times. If this passes, how do we go about doing that? What's the process? Is this some kind of direction to staff that we reach out to those particular leaders?
Councillor?
Thank you. I didn't really direct this for staff to necessarily do. It's more or less, a message for us within the community that this is what we agree, that we are sending a message to the community. And when we do have conversations with our faith leaders, that we are promoting peace and healing and understanding. It's really just a confirmation of what we're trying to promote to the community. And if we're consistent and we all agree, then that is what I'm asking us to do.
Councillor? Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. That carries. Regional report. Someone like to move to receive this? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gardner. Any comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to yourself, actually. We just passed a motion with respect to homelessness. I did notice on the regional plan, it also spoke to the fact that the York region is working on the homelessness service system plan as part of a 10-year housing and homelessness plan. Can you expand on that perhaps?
Absolutely, Councillor. We actually had a special council meeting. A regional council sat pretty much for about 8 hours, and we had a lot of deputants from around York region that deal with homelessness, deal with providing subsidized housing, come out, even provide shelter for asylum seekers. And they came out and spoke to us about what they're seeing, the needs, and how do we go about helping prevent and basically intervene to create a plan that we can actually try to get to a place where we can eradicate homelessness. We are going to be developing a homeless plan, and it's going to be coming back to York Region Council in the new year, probably second quarter, early second quarter. And we'll be discussing the three main priorities, which are prevention and diversion and intervention, and looking at how we as a region, provide that necessary housing. Ultimately, though, a lot of the conversation was around, as I think Councillor Gallo mentioned as well, is it's a lot of funding from the other levels of government. And we know that we require that funding. And so it's vitally important that we continue to work with all three levels. When we went down to Ottawa to speak with the ministers, and we spoke to the Minister of Housing at the time, we spoke to the fact that if we actually built a process where the funding was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, the region today could start building, from a Housing York perspective, well over 1,200 units immediately. But we need that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 formula, and we can get that done. And so it's going to take all of us working together, but we are developing that plan, and we're listening to everyone within York region on how we work on that plan.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say then, though, while I recognize that it's dependent on all levels of government working together, there still will be action items that will come out of the plan that York region, with the support of the other municipalities, can execute?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing it.
And as soon as that, just to that point, Councillor, as soon as we have something, I'll definitely send that along to every member of council. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really sorry to see about the violence against paramedics, and I hope the steps that are being taken will help them. I have a question about Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. It's on page 2. My apology, I could have asked you in advance. You could tell us at another time. I don't need it today.
If you want, I'll get you. I'm still trying to look for it so I can get reminded of what we spoke about. I'll get you that answer.
Okay. And I'm not happy to hear that the regional council voted against proceeding with a vacant homes tax. I see their reasons are that the prices of homes are falling, and there may be fewer investors and maybe less vacancy. But I think for so many years now, we've had vacant homes, and if the region won't proceed, does that mean that the town cannot?
I've asked that. I'm going to ask our solicitor, maybe if she can help out, because I haven't got a straight answer on this. If the region does not pass the vacant tax, which they have not, can we as the lower tier municipality pass a vacant tax? Because some people have suggested that we need the region to pass it first before we can pass it. But Ms. Wainwright Van Kess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So through the exploration of the vacant home tax, the way the structure that we are looking at it is there needs to be essentially like an adjudicator to deal with any discrepancies on this. And that was looking to be at the regional level. The reason the region was taking the lead on this is because the region also sets the tax ratios. So our taxes are very integrated. It's not just a local level tax. We have the upper tier. So it'd be very difficult for us to go it alone. And part of the other challenge was the administrative burden would be significant if we went alone on that.
And Councillor, I'm just going to add to the fact that while there was support for a vacant tax, the issue is that the report that came before Regional Council identified the fact that at a 1% tax to the vacant home, it would actually cost the region more to implement than we would actually bring in. And so therefore, the majority of the members at the table felt that we don't want to spend more money basically to receive next to nothing. And so unless the only way to combat that is to raise the amount that you're going to tax. And there's a few members that didn't feel comfortable in raising that amount. Toronto does it 3%. It was suggested if we do it 2%, we could probably lift some of those numbers and probably break even. I was supportive of that, but unfortunately it didn't pass.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe this is something that council could look at to send a motion to the region, or you could raise it again, because I mean, certainly we have to break even, but the goal is to reduce homelessness or to increase places for people to live. So I don't think this is something that we should be neglecting. It's a piece of the puzzle that, you know, hopefully we can all put together and do something about the current housing situation. So perhaps we can speak about that another time, whether it would be appropriate for Aurora to do a motion.
So we can speak about
Thank
that.
you.
And I'll be able to answer your housing. I found it Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund that we sent a request to the province to allow further, basically to allow the upper tier, so the region, to be eligible for that funding. That is the $200 million that the province provided for water, wastewater. That is for the lower tiers. But we're confident that something might be coming in the near future for York Region in regards to our sewage solution, our southern sewage solution.
I look forward
which is
to
what
that.
we're pushing for and trying to make sure that we're receiving some funding for that.
We can't build the homes if we don't have the
Absolutely.
sanitary sewers.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions to the regional report? Call the vote. Councillor Weiss. Councillor Weiss is a yes. That carries. Number 12, 12.1. Councillor Gilliland, this is yours. Would you like to move as is? Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Gallo, thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Seeing as I've never done one of these before, I'm not really what I'm supposed to be saying. Other than the fact that, you know, my opinion hasn't changed. I think the question was that there were 5 staff that were being requested to be hired, and that the town square was expected to have a delayed spring opening. As such, behind the scenes, I had consulted with the director, who saw my amendment and was okay with the April 1 start for 1 customer service and 2 facility operators, and then phase in the subsequent facility operators thereafter. Just recognizing we already do have 5 full-time staff for town square, one of them being a customer service. And, you know, through my amendment, it was really just to have transparency and accountability. And, you know, having had the past director to agree that she's fine with this, I don't see any reason why we can't move forward as it was presented.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. When the motion was originally presented, you know, I brought up the fact that, you know, in my opinion, that, you know, our CAO and the executive team have used good judgment in the past, and they have already implemented things like delayed hirings, ensuring that there's actual need before moving forward with that, and always trying to put both the needs of the organization as well as the taxpayers first in this decision-making process. I've had an opportunity to have further conversations with our CEO with respect to this, and perhaps if you'd like to share with the rest of council, perhaps some thoughts around this past year and staff's ability and yourself's ability to exercise that good judgment with respect to making sure that the position is needed before actually going out and hiring the person.
Mr. CEO.
That's you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So I did look at our experience in 2023. Councillor Thompson is quite right. This is something that as staff we would do throughout the course of the year, not just with new positions, but also with vacancies as they come up in the organization. So in looking at 2023, we had 24 postings, a mix of new positions from previous budgets, as well as vacancies in existing positions. And of the 24 permanent full-time postings, 10 of those were delayed for various reasons, anywhere from 3.5 to 11 months. So those are decisions that we made throughout the process. I'll give a couple of examples. I don't have all of the details of all those, but
What's the point of order, Councillor?
Addressing today, and right now we're addressing positions of the past. It's two completely different subjects.
No, but I think the councillor is asking for clarification on how staff have used their discretion in the hiring process, which this is specifically speaking to the hiring and delaying hiring. And councillor's asking on staff's perspective of what they do in that regards. So I hope I'm in your point of order. Go ahead.
thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to give a couple of examples, over the past year, we had a roads technician position that was approved in an earlier budget, but we are just getting around to actually filling that now. We felt that with the new director coming into the role, as well as some fine tuning of the role, we weren't prepared to hire it as scheduled. And we also wanted to make sure we had good alignment with the union on the position. So that one is just now being hired, even though it was approved some time ago. We had an existing vacancy of a council administrator. We delayed that by over 6 months. Again, we had a new director coming in, and it was a period of time when the workload was a little lower over the summer coming into the fall. So we were able to flex that one as well. So I'm sure there's other examples I could get, but I mean, at the end of the day, I personally approve any posting that goes up for any position, whether it's a new one or an existing one. So there is that also that opportunity to reflect on the immediate need for the position. So,
Councillor.
Thank you. And that's why I voted against it in the first place, and I'll continue to do so. Staff have demonstrated good judgment. Staff understand the concerns of council. To me, the motion, borders on micromanaging of staff, and I'm not supportive of that. I think that as long as staff continue to exercise good judgment, that we should trust our staff.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. Councillor Gilliland, please do not wait till after I say call the vote. But you don't have to wait. You put it up. It's up to the chair if someone comes in. I need people to hit the button before I say call the vote. I will allow this one, but next time I will not allow it. If it comes up, I watch this board all night. If your name comes up after I say call the vote, I will not recognize you as per our procedural bylaw. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you. I would prefer a nicer tone. Thank you. I guess I really want to respond to the fact that, the Aurora Town Square has been the white elephant project in the community of $55 million. And when we're presented with anything in the budget that's adding new, the residents, they're paying attention, and they want us as council members to be able to identify where we can make sure that there's some cost cutting and transparency there. And whether or not town staff, we know what they do as far as staggering or stalled starts, that's great. But what I've identified when I was looking at the operating, especially being 66% more than we had anticipated, from $720,000 annually to $1.2 million, I'm certain a lot of this has to do with staffing and other variables. So it would be prudent to at least make some accountability and hard starts if it's possible. So at least we can ensure that we know we're going to be saving at least a minimum of 41,000 or 40,000 average per month on extra staff. And if this is an area where we can at least kind of set a tone, that's really what I'm trying to achieve here. And I don't see that there's any issue, especially when I've had the conversation with the director, that April 1st would be an acceptable start. So there really is no problem here. The reality is that everybody's okay with that. So I don't know why we need to be voting against something that so obviously isn't going to be something that's going to contribute to the failure of Aurora Town Square. I think the Town Square is going to do just fine with this motion that was presented as the way it was.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If you vote in favor, you're voting in favor of overriding the veto, which means that the delay in hirings would be approved. If you vote opposed, by voting no, you're voting to uphold the veto. If you vote yes to what is on the floor, what is on the floor is that council override the mayor's veto of budget amendment 005 Aurora Town Square staffing. So if you vote yes, it means you are voting to override the veto. If you vote no, it means you're voting to uphold the veto. Understood? Just clarifying, Town Square is not 55 million. It's 53.1. Also, as I said, I'm not going to handcuff staff and say give them a hard line. They've demonstrated, as was mentioned, that they have the ability to look at this, and if there needs to be a delay in the hirings, they can make that decision. And I trust our expert staff in making that evaluation. They've shown time and time again that they can make that evaluation. But if we need to hire earlier, but we've given them a date that's later and they can't, that does undermine the possibility of the successes of the opening of the biggest investment we've made in our community. Call the vote. That fails. New business. Councillor Reese. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should have raised this during the OP discussion, but I just wonder, I'm thinking it's to you, to Mr. Muno, with respect to wetlands. At last week's meeting, staff and the consultant mentioned that the width of buffers to wetlands and other water features proposed by developers were still being reviewed by Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. I didn't realize that Lake Simcoe was still weighing in on that. So do they have the same level of scrutiny as they used to with all the changes that have been made?
Mr. Romano, before I ask you to answer that, Councillor, I'm going to allow this one this
Thank
time.
you.
This is not new business. New business is for new business. This is bringing up something that has already been done. So
Thank
it's
you.
not new, but I
Appreciate
will
you
allow it
allowing
because
it.
this has happened a couple of times, and I'm just letting everyone know we're following the procedural bylaw to the T. Mr. Romano.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Conservation Authority was still involved in the review if the lands in question are, hazard lands, wetlands within the floodplain. We don't have many of those situations, but they would still be involved in that review. For applications that are don't have that type of feature, they're no longer involved in the review. But again, environmental impact study is still required, and that's where the town would then retain a third party reviewer to take a look to review those features in the environmental background studies.
Councillor.
For the ones that Lake Simcoe still does review, do we get to see the detailed report, or is it just a comment?
Through me.
Through you, Mr.
Through Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Romano.
You, Mr. Mayor, yes, the authority provides a detailed review of those reports. They do site visits and they provide detailed comments to the applicant and to the town.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I just like to say to staff through you, Mr. Mayor, that wetlands are so important for filtering water, breaking down sediments, removing phosphorus, habitat, and of course, flood control. So I ask that we do anything that we can to ensure that the buffers are kept as large as they can be made and that they aren't averaged out so that some are smaller and some are bigger, because in those areas where they're smaller, that presents a higher risk. Thank you.
You, Councillor Thompson, your business. Go ahead.
I'm not sure whether to direct it to Ms. McDougall or Ms. Smith, but at the end of November, we got an update on the SARC. Can we sort of expect to get a regular update every month or so with regards to the progress on the SARC?
Ms. McDougall.
I meant the gymnasium, obviously.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we certainly can accommodate that with an update for council, as we have with the town square, very similar.
That's where I was getting at. I'm just in terms of managing expectations. I certainly drive by it every day. I see some of the progress, but it was great getting the information. And I think it'd be great to continue to keep council and residents informed on the progress.
Your business.
Yes, as mentioned last week, I want to make a motion to reconsider CMS 23-049 facility allocation policy review and to defer it to, I believe, the February cycle. And I've spoken to staff just to confirm that it's not an issue and just to tweak the policy. I sat in the chair at GC, so I didn't really get a chance to discuss it, and then I forgot last council meeting to pull it.
Thank you, Councillor. So someone want to second that? Councillor Weiss, thank you. I need 2/3. Okay. Are there any comments or questions? Call a vote. Councillor Gallo, I'm assuming that's correct on the screen.
Yep.
I think we all understand the intention. If there's a few words maybe that we need to fix, we can do that. But I think for the most part, it captures what you want.
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Gardner. That carries. Councillor Geller, anything else? No? Councillor Kemp, new business? No? Bylaws. Someone like to move the bylaws? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Weiss, any comments, questions on the bylaw? Call the vote. That carries. Confirming bylaw. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. Sorry, I forgot we still have to finish. Someone should have reminded me we didn't finish. Motion to move back into closed session. Do we need a motion? Just a recess? Okay, recess. We're going back in. Madam Deputy Clerk, we are reporting out of closed session. We have 2 items. First item, 4.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion for the first item is to receive the report and the confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Someone like to move that? Councillor Kim, second by Councillor Thompson. Comments, questions? Or to vote?
Recorded vote has been requested for the first item of council closed session this evening. Councillor Gardner, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Thompson, how do you vote? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Mayor Mrakas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes yes. Councillor Kim? Councillor Kim votes yes. Councillor Gilliland? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. That carries.
Thank you. 4.2.
Motion for the second item is to receive the report and that the confidential direction of staff be confirmed.
Mover, seconder. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Gardner, comments, questions? Record a vote.
A recorded vote has been requested for the second item of council closed session this evening. Councillor Thompson, how do you vote? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Mayor Mrakas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Kim, how do you vote? Councillor Kim votes yes. Councillor Gardner, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Gilliland, how do you vote? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Councillor Weiss, how do you vote? Councillor Weiss votes yes. That carries.
Confirming by law. Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Weiss, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn closed session. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Weiss, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Back to council. Confirming by law. Someone like to move that? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Gallo, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.